This is the Tapped In Podcast, the podcast for beverage distributors that want to empower their sales team to drive business results. Listen up and welcome back to another episode of the Tapped In Sales Podcast, your podcast for beer distributors by beer distributors. I'm one of your many co-hosts, Bud, here with Moneyball, Ross, and Data Mike. This week, we have some people on the road. Ross is Je ne parle pas français. We are in the France, in the Paris. Oui, oui.
Way. On the Marais.
I think Bud's impression was better, Ross. You need more practice.
And Mike, you are in the woods.
Yeah. I'm
in the north.
I'm in my sweet spot in the woods.
Did we hit our stretch goal on Starlink?
Well, we sort of did, because obviously last Monday, so last week's episode was filmed in the McDonald's parking lot. Because I didn't have Starlink fully up and testing, and I was just a little worried about the weather and all that good stuff. But yeah, we hit it. I almost died doing it, but the actual little dishy is what they call it, is 40 feet in the air above the tree line. You're pulling down some serious numbers, and yeah, it's working flawless.
The reason why women live longer than men, for anybody listening, is because we back up trailers to put our ladders on so we could climb higher up the tree.
Yeah, actually it was.
And don't have anybody watching us doing it to either visually inspect us upon our death or call for help when we do need help from falling from great heights.
And we do such acts when there's nobody else around to help us in case there is an emergency. Yeah, I needed another like 5 feet to cut the top of the tree off. Like there's some limbs up there that were going to get in the way, and I wasn't about to go through all this work to get more stuff in the way. So I backed the side-by-side up to the tree, and I put the ladder in the back of the side-by-side and leaned it against the tree, which was perfect. But when I got that limb to cut, and my son was here. Everybody else was in town. It was just me and my son, and he had been helping me. And he goes, well, I'm going to go inside and take a nap. I go, all right. He goes, I'm tired. Well, I didn't think about it, but then that left me out there home alone, right?
Solo.
20 feet up in a tree. And that limb that I had been working on snapped, and it fell right exactly how I wanted it to, but it clipped my ladder, which then turned my ladder, which then left me holding onto a tree like this with a ladder that's in the back of a side-by-side on one leg. And when I started yelling for him, then I realized how bad of an idea that was, not only because of the situation I was in, but the radio was playing, and he was inside with fans running, and it was so loud he couldn't hear me yelling for him. But I got down, and I'm here. No injuries. I know. Everything worked.
Did you climb down the tree?
No. So I bear hugged that tree.
Like a bear.
I tried to skid it. I tried to skim it back over so that both legs were back in the side by side, not on the ground. That didn't work. So I had to basically hold on to the tree as long as I could, and then balance on that one leg coming down, because it was kind of stuck up into the side by side, which I think saved my life. If it was on the ground, and it would have just spun all the way around, but it hit something in there. So yeah.
Michael.
But hey, you know what? That thing is in a tree. It is on a pole that pivots down now with a pulley. Like I pull it, pivots down. I put it on there. I pivot it right back up there. It's perfect. It's everything I ever
Only
wanted.
positive.
Only
Only positive.
Yeah.
Only positive.
We're rocking.
Well, it's a good topic then for today of what's the right risk? It's a great topic for today, is what is the right risk in designating at-risk pay for sales reps and managers? So Mike took an incredible amount of risk to put off the Starlink last week. And now we're going to talk about how much risk should we have at risk, percentage-wise base or commission or salary versus at-risk pay. So it's a great topic, Mike, because you took the most risk out of everybody on this phone call.
But I got the reward too.
You did.
Oh, to hang out with us?
Good.
Yeah, exactly. To be able to work.
I don't know. That risk-return ratio doesn't sound good to me.
Word. Well, today's topic is going to be, seriously, what is the right risk? Question we get regularly. And how much risk should be on the table for a sales team? Should it be 5%? Should it be 50%? Should it be 100%? what are top performers getting out of this? What are teams getting out of this? And this is a lot of what we do professionally, working with VXP clients one-on-one. So if you're an owner, if you're a VP, if you're trying to think about comp planning, this is a great episode for you. And if you're a sales rep listening, this will be an episode for you, because you're going to understand some of the decisions in the inner workings of the sausage gets made as to why the numbers are the way the numbers are for your client, for your operation as well. So common questions we get out of, like, are people hitting their bonuses too often? Are they not hitting them often enough? Are the reps motivated to go above and beyond? And a lot of these things always start with, what is the right percentage at risk? And let's talk about a story from our days, Mike, where we were at Atlas 100% at risk, basically doing $100 a base a week, so $5,200 a year. People making between 55 and 60,000 a year at this time when we did this project, and all the rest of it was all variable. It was a commission component and a PFP component. And we moved towards a model of 70-30, or was it 75-25? Is that where we moved first, Mike? Do you remember?
I think it was 70-30. No, it wasn't 70-30. It was, yeah, no, you're right. It was 75-25.
That's what I thought too.
Yeah, you're right.
So it's 75-25 when we first launched. And let's go through some of the decisions that we made, why that happened. So Mike, do you remember anything from back then as why we moved in that direction to start with?
I love how you phrase that. Do you remember anything from back then? No, my memory isn't as sharp as it used to be, to answer your first question. The second one, I do. And it's tricky, working with so much at risk, you almost feel obligated to make the goals more obtainable, because you're dealing with a lot of somebody's income, right? You're dealing with a big percentage of their income. And when you start setting some of those objectives too hard, you feel bad. Like, hey, this is what I really want to get done. This is the strategic direction that the company needs to go to. And I know this is a really hard task to ask. And I know you might lose out on a big chunk of your money. So that was tough. And I feel like that then leads to soft goal setting, soft target setting, because you do have the responsibility of somebody's salary and income on your shoulders. So moving away from that model into the 75 base, 25 at risk took that weight off of our shoulders as managers, of managing somebody else's income. But I also saw the faces of the sales reps when that happened. They were relieved. They really liked that model, right? When they were like, yes, this is great. Now we have a smaller portion, being 25%, set for targets. That is basically, at risk pay is supposed to sharpen focus, right? So if we really want to sharpen somebody's focus and get them to focus on what is driving the business strategically, it needs to be a sharper focus, which we talked about last week too. But that allows us to do that with just that 30%. Now we don't have different targets for this, and hey, take pictures of this, and is your pricing correct? Did this happen here? Those are things that are just part of your day-to-day job. Now we're using that 25% to lead the business where it needs to be. And in our case, it was volume and gross profit and finished product loss.
And Ross, when you're working with clients on having this initial conversation, because you helped us do this too, where does your guiding principle start with how much should be at risk? And it is unique to each location. I'm sure you and I will get into the pros and cons of various outcomes. But where do you like to start from a perspective of kind of leading implementations and doing this hundreds of times now?
Yeah, let's go back to what we continue to say is, what are we trying to achieve? Right? So that's part one. And more isn't always better. And what I mean by that is, if we're going to, let's put objectives and incentives on the side for a second, and let's just talk about pure variable pay as it relates to a volume or a dollar type target. And I think, there's a tendency to want to say, hey, let's go into that, lean into it hard. Let's go 100% revenue-based compensation, or 100% volume, or make it a big number. But I think it goes back to, what is it that we're trying to achieve? And as I see it, there's two things we're trying to do, and we're trying to put these things in balance. And those things are is it enough money per incremental amount of effort? In other words, do the reps feel like if I put this amount of effort in, that amount of reward is worth it? So you've got that on one side of the scale. On the other side of the scale, you've got, is the return on investment for incremental dollars spent a good number for the company? In other words, is the return on investment for dollars spent going to properly reward the company for the dollars invested? So those two things have to be kept in balance. And going back to kind of what we said earlier, or what you were saying, is that it's different per organization because the routes are not always analogous in terms of the amount of profit they generate, the amount of windshield time versus non-on-premise versus non-on-premise versus C-store. So there's variability in there. But again, I think as we go back to what we're trying to achieve, there's the two things. Return on incremental effort appropriate to get the results we want for the reps, and two, that the return on investment per dollar spent for the company is right-sized. So that doesn't lead us to a fixed number. Yep. It's got to be 25%, 30%, or 50%, or 75%. We just have to start there and work from there into what the number should be.
I think that's important for people to contextualize too. You're talking about what is the physical dollar value that's going to get the results you want. Start with that in mind. What the percentages are different based on your market and your people and what people are going to pay attention to in terms of raw physical dollars. And this is what I like to talk to folks about, because once we have that quotient figured out, the percentage of at risk is a secondary conversation that's more related to workforce availability. If you can get people to come to work for you for 50% or 70% at risk, by all means, that's not going to increase performance anymore or decrease performance anymore. If that's the way your culture fits and the way you want to do it, go for it. If you're in a market where your workplace availability and your team availability to attract new talent is a little slimmer and you need to up that base to attract that talent, you should do that too. So people need to look at this, and managers need to look at this through that kind of HR workforce attraction lens as well. And what did it for me when we moved away from basically 100% at risk, it was like 95% at risk, to the 75-25 model, was something you told me, Ross, which was people's pay changes when you do commissions like that, because in the beer industry, there's such a seasonal curve to how we sell our products. So their income changes vastly from January, February to July and August, and then back again in the Q4 and the shoulder months. But their mortgage doesn't change. Their car payment doesn't change. Their cell phone bill doesn't change. There's other things that they need to do to run their life, they stay the same every month. And having a base in a sales team in today's world for the products that beer distributors sell and beverage distributors sell makes just inherently a lot more sense to me when you put it through that lens of attracting talent and attracting the team. And that percentage is different based on your employment and based on where you're at and a little bit of the culture you want to drive too. But that's where I kind of sit at it. Does that make sense, guys?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, right back to what Russ said, right? I mean, you don't want too much and too little, right? And what is that magic number? I mean, sure, we'll toss around some percentages, but I don't think there is a magic number like Ross said. But I mean, too much at risk and you lose stability. Too little, you're going to lose the urgency. So what is that too much and too little to your team, to your reps and your organization? And I think that's going to be that's going to change from distributor to distributor and factors.
Visually in my mind, I see it kind of as an efficient frontier, right? You can get the results across kind of a spectrum of percentage, by adjusting the levers in terms of how the pay is structured, that you can get a lot more out of less money potentially. But by adjusting the factors, again, targeting that return on investment for the company and dollars for every incremental effort, you can make that work across kind of an efficient frontier. So it's not like there's an optimal number and it's $1,000 per month. That's the number. It can be $500 a month, but maybe it starts a little bit later. Maybe there's more like It's more steep in terms of how it functions. In a commissions type structure, which we'll probably get into why I don't particularly like commissions, and that was one of the reasons you listed out, Bud. I'm sure we'll get into that, but even in a commission style model, how much you pay per case can be adjusted to kind of match that frontier.
If we were to put a percentage on it, and everybody wanted to Bud, just tell us the percentage we should have at risk. And from a percentage basis, the sweet spot for me is usually minimum around 25%, maximum around 50%. I see a diminishing returns across our client base for anybody who has greater than 50% at risk for total pay. That incremental percentage point, I don't think it drives any extra incremental attention beyond. So it's not that you can't do it. I just don't think you're driving anything extra. It's not like a rep who has 75% at risk is 50% better than somebody who has 25% at risk. But somewhere in there is probably a good sweet spot. Then how you do the rest of it, is it all base? Is it some form of PFP as well, which is technically at risk? Too, that is really left up to the eye of the beholder and in your workplace, how you can attract talent and more of a human resource HR discussion as well. So those would be my guiding principles I'd throw out to folks.
Yeah, and as we continue the conversation, we're putting objectives and incentives over here. This is purely volume and revenue type variable costs.
Yep. The thing that I found fascinating, Mike, around our experience making this transition is that we went from 75 to 75-25, but then over multiple years of time, when we offered raises to the sales team, and we were weird, we gave them choices. We said, hey, this is the number that we're going to do for a raise for you individually. How would you like it spent? And do you want it in all variable? Do you want it in all base? Do you want it 50-50? We'd love to take some feedback from you. And what happened when we did that with the sales team initially?
They almost always chose more in their variable pay, not in their base. I would say.
Why do you think that was?
Yeah, almost every time they chose that, and I think I look back at it, and I think too, and that was a great time in history, right, where we were bringing in some new brands, the business was growing. GP, we had just been a few years into VXP, so our GP was growing at a very, very good clip when volume was pretty soft. And I think that our reps were pretty smart with that, to where they could see, all right, hey, this is how the overall company is doing, growing GP. We want a piece of that pie too, right? And in order to get a piece of that pie, I need to have more at risk. And those dollars can grow a lot faster than Bud's raise every year. Not saying, Bud, your raise was not good every year, but I'm saying that those numbers could grow faster, and we could see that return quicker, and it was uncapped, which was great too. But I feel like that comes back to a lot of the return on effort as well too, right? Our reps were pretty smart on that. They're like, hey, some of these products that we're bringing in, it's not easy to sell. It's not easy to get placements. It's not easy to get shelf space. It's not easy to get displays. There's a lot of effort that goes into selling these items, these products, and I want to get paid for it. I want the maximum return on my efforts and my investments that I can get. And I think by aligning themselves, putting more in that variable comp, right, allowed them to do that. Now, and for reference, I know we've mentioned this a couple of times, but maybe new listeners, we had $0 tied to objectives and incentives. It was strictly VXP, GP, volume, FPL. So in our case, that's how our reps took advantage of that, and loved it. And yeah, and definitely moving their dollars over. Then I fell into that bucket too, right? When we first launched, we told this story a couple times, but I came to you, you would ask me, and I wanted my money, my raise or whatever was coming. I wanted that put in VXP as well, because I wanted to see those good dollars grow.
It's indicative of two important things that Mike just talked about. One is that you're properly calibrated on the risk to return ratio. And if the sales team wants additional incremental dollars to come into the variable program, then that's a sign that the effort to return ratio is properly set. Again, we're assuming that the other side's appropriate too, that the company's got a good return on investment, that the company's not getting put themselves in a bad spot here. So, but otherwise, that's a good sign. The other sign of it too is that there's a high degree of trust in the sales team, because the sales team has to trust that the management will honor the payout and that they've seen it play for the couple of months in a way that they know it's not going to change, and that number that they see, again, we talk about it all the time. The transparency and timeliness of the results is helpful because it allows the reps to see how they're doing as they go and what the final number is potentially going to be, or what they can kind of calibrate towards it. But again, high degree of trust and properly tuned effort to return ratio. If there's any one thing that during setup with clients that is the most important variable for us to quote unquote get right, it's making sure that when we go into this variable world, if they're going from something else or we're moving from an incentive or a revenue type model, that we're doing so and we're calibrating to make sure that that effort to return ratio is good, so that the reps have that same response and the sales manager have the same response that Mikey and the sales team at Atlas did.
The thing that I loved about it is that the reps saw the forest through the trees, and that they realized that if we did a cost of living raise or performance-based raise for $2,000, I could take my $2,000 and it would always be $2,000. Or I could actually move that money into at risk on VXP, and I could make that be 21 or 22 or 23 or some kind of larger number over a year's time. And that's what people got really excited about in my end, and what got me excited too. So the other piece about it that I wanted to touch base on with you, Ross, is you're not a big fan of traditional commissions. Think of percentage per revenue. Think of even percentage per profit. We almost never see anybody doing that. But percentage of revenue, we see a lot. We see still value dollar or value cents per case for volume. So what's your vibe on that? What don't you like about it? What is left in the eye of the beholder in your mind on that front?
Way to tee it up. Yeah, I have several issues with that type of commission structure. One you mentioned and you described very well, Bud, which is you are aligning the pay to the seasonal curve, and everybody, people's boat payments and house payments are not seasonally adjusted. So just because your payouts are tied to, the high season of your business doesn't change the structure of people's lives. And you're then asking them to plan their lives around a profiled pay structure, which I don't think is fair. And it's not fair to have to ask somebody to tailor their lives to match the seasonal nature of your business. It doesn't seem right to me in that respect. So that's one. Two is you immediately run into the problem of, again, effort to return, right? I might be an on-premise rep and I might call on a handful of very, very important accounts. Volumetrically, my route doesn't matter. I say that in jest, right? It's one chain store drop could be 3 months of my route, but we're building brands and we're holding tap handles and we're locking down a segment of the business that's very important to our suppliers. So why would I get the same case commission structure that somebody that just goes in and writes an order for a chain, or most of it's pre-placed? Why would I get the same payout per case? That makes no sense. Is my effort less to get that tap handle or to get that placement of a bottle at the bar? I don't think so. In fact, I think it might be harder. So you immediately have a mismatch of effort to return across different segments of your company. Okay, cool. Now I'm setting different commission structures for different segments. Okay, let's take that one step further. Let's say I have a route that's more rural than you. I'm behind the windshield a lot more than you. Okay, again, effort to return. Is my job harder because I don't have to be in the car as much or less? The fact that I park my car and walk to a couple accounts versus having to drive between them, I don't think that makes the job any easier or harder. I think it's just as hard to deal with a rural territory, if not harder, than to deal with a park my car and walk around downtown. So again, it's inherently unfair. Why would I pay the same per case rate for somebody that parks their car and walks to the accounts versus somebody that spends half their day doing the windshield thing? Now, I get it. Some people would prefer more driving versus selling, and there's other people that love the energy and the speed of being in a metro area and hitting a bunch of accounts and dealing with that energy. It doesn't make one route easier or harder than the other. And it doesn't make them more important or less than the other. So again, now I'm like, okay, so now I got to cross-section so I got to look at my segments, set different payout structures. Now I got to split the internal structures of those based on rural versus not rural versus demographics. And I have to split it again. And let's say the demographics are changing over time of these territories. Well, I got to reassess it every 6 to 12 months to make sure I'm properly calibrated. And no matter how you properly calibrate it, you're painting a brush across multiple territories. It just doesn't work. And you're just creating a lot of work for yourself, and you're creating inherent unfairness. And the other thing I've noticed over time is you start to slip towards lower and lower revenue routes over time. And it just tends to be the incentive to do that versus, properly concentrate. If you're looking at return on investment per route and that return ratio, it naturally leads to a place where you're kind of optimizing the size and structure of the routes. And I don't see that happen as much with the commission model.
Yeah. The piece that I came to hate about it is, and the more that I see clients do this before they come on to VXP, is like a light bulb goes off when I say your percent of revenue leads you to fall into a volume dollar trap. I want to sell them a maximum amount of volume and through dollars now, which pushes you back into selling premium and value segment, which is what you were probably trying to get away from when you went to a percent of revenue, because you're saying XYZ brand, New Belgium, Beatbox, Good to Grow, whatever the hell it is so much more valuable. If I pay a percent commission on it, then boom, they'll naturally organically pay attention to that. But that's not what's happening. The reps fall back into a dollar volume trap, and they're still focusing on the tonnage of dollars through the velocity lens. And it's fascinating when I walk people through this. It's like a light bulb goes on. They're like, oh shit, that's exactly what we have not gotten past in any way, shape, or form. And then the other piece that I don't love about it either is that it just doesn't inherently teach transparency. To your point, Ross, I am maybe manipulating numbers around on a somewhat regular basis on a percentage of revenue per case, or a percentage per case, or a value per case. And then we wonder why reps are confused about how they make money, because we're always kind of manipulating around to try to balance a route out or try to balance an income. And yep.
One more thing I want to add about the seasonal curve you were talking about. And that is, I think a lot of the good work that happens during that low season. In other words, what you're able to get done when shit isn't crazy in terms of placements, in terms of relationship building, that's what pays all summer, right? During summer, you're just writing orders and scrambling. The real work happens during the winter. And so you're not paying people on a straight commission structure during the winter because they're not moving boxes. Well, I would argue what they're doing is even more important, because you're going to have a shit summer if you're not doing the good work during the winter.
Yeah. And you brought up a great point around different commission structures. And Mike, I'll kick this to you, because this has come up with us at Atlas and with other wholesalers along the way too. Is like, I'm paying the people different values to do the same work. And I remember Tommy saying that multiple times, like, how are we going to get around justifying paying somebody a different value for doing the same exact work? And the experiment we tried, which we've talked about on the podcast before, is when we started paying people a different commission rate to handle the chain stores, which pissed everybody off.
Yeah, we don't recommend that.
And got the results that I needed on the bottom line, but did not get the cultural results that I was looking for either.
Yeah, exactly. We've touched on it, but more risk doesn't mean more motivation. It doesn't mean that you magically put more money at risk and you're going to find that motivation. It just means more pressure, right? Without clarity, that pressure can turn to resentment real quick. And that's a great way to break up a team, put some bad seeds in a team, right? And I wouldn't say that's what happened with us at Atlas when we moved to that type of commission structure, but it definitely demotivated the reps in those accounts because they, and I think backing up too, right? Did they have merchandising support or did we not have merchandising support?
Oh, no, we didn't do merchandising support
Right. So,
either.
right. So now we're asking them the return on effort really just got cut into a quarter is what we were basically asking from our reps at that point. And that was just a great way to say, F these stores, F this company, F, right? I don't want to do this. And that's not,
Bud.
Yeah,
He's a dickhead.
That's not what we're looking to achieve here by any means, right? Your reps need to feel like they can control the outcome. If they don't, then that risk is just punishment, right? Our reps in that situation couldn't control the outcome because no matter what they did, they couldn't make more money. They were just moving cases, hitting buttons, moving cases, right? And the reps have to trust the outcome too. I mean, do they trust the numbers? Do they believe that they can actually impact the results? Are their actions going to impact the results? And is your current plan entitled or earned? Right? All of those factors can go into setting up what is a good plan. And I don't think paying people to do more work for less money is the perfect plan. And we learn from our mistakes, right?
That's what we do our best to learn from our mistakes and get better for sure.
Yeah, but and we played with a couple other different models too, of exactly like what Ross said. It is not easy selling in a tap handle, holding on to a tap handle, maybe selling in this high-end product. It's definitely not easy getting in some of these new RTDs and A beers, into a on-premise account that has a lot of roadblocks. I don't need that. I've got one. I don't need any more than that. I've got this and it sells great, right? There is a lot of effort that goes into that. So a one-size-fits-all commission structure doesn't always work. Maybe we do have some of those smaller volume, more impact routes, like what Ross said, right? Where we're building brands, we're sampling brands, we're getting brands into where it really counts, whether it be festivals, events, on-premise locations, hotspots in town. We're putting in a lot of work there. That work needs to go noticed as well. We're not moving a whole lot of cases, so maybe that structure is built a little bit different. Or maybe you just come over to VXP and everybody's motivated by growing gross profit if you're not already, and it solves all of those problems. But
shameless plug.
Do you like that plug?
And I hate how I hate how we've gotten away as an industry from brand building in terms of putting our best reps into those accounts where it matters.
Mm-hmm.
And I hate to put in commission structures that take us away from, again, that secondary objective that we have, which is brand building. We talk about it a lot, and I think it's still very important. On-premise is still where brands are built, right? If it's experience. If I have a great experience, I'm going to buy it in the off-premise. I still think that's true. I think it's not as important as it used to be in terms of suppliers focus, but it probably should be. And then the other side of that too is I've noticed even in the off-premise, there's accounts that are more high-end focused, and you probably need a different rep to go in there that is better able to speak to those product segments. Whether that be wine, it's especially true in the wine market, right? And it's being able to speak to those wines and speak to that client. I think you do yourself a disservice if you just look at it and say geographically or by volume, and you don't think about the relationship between the individual and the account. And that cuts across, for lack of a better term, ethnicity too, is you're looking at your market and who you've got going into certain parts of your certain neighborhoods and certain population groups.
It would have been a fascinating experience, Mike, because when we had Erin on our team, our wine guru, and she was way too good for us and moved on to much better and better things post our time working with us. But we sold the wine business because we lost her talent.
We did.
And we didn't know what we were doing. And she moved on to Gordon Food Service to make way more money than we could afford to pay her, and which was good for her. But like, and I just sold the whole wine business because none of us understood what was going on anymore, or what we should or shouldn't do. And I would find it fascinating that if we were working with Ross and with VXP at that time, if we could have been able to figure that out, if we would have had the right return on effort ratio, and if people would have actually understood and taken the extra time to learn how to sell wine.
Yeah.
Well, there's nothing better than walking into that wine shop with that Budweiser polo, talking
I
about
know.
selling in that Clos de Bois.
It's a Merlot. Give me the fucking Merlot. Oh my God. So, Ross, question for you to kick off. What about middle managers? Percentage at risk for middle managers. Do we have that same perspective on percentages? Do we have that same perspective on valuing the return on effort and dollars first? How do you work your way up? And if you have multiple layers of middle management, because some people have not only team leads, but they also might have territory directors, or they might have other middle management at very large wholesalers too. Like, how do we think about that group of people as well that are more of that middle management leadership outfit?
Yeah, I'm going to quickly kick it back to Mike here in a little bit, but I think the nice thing about management level as you move to team leaders and up towards senior management, the return on investment calculation becomes less of an issue. The amount of dollars that are represented underneath that stack is high enough that you got a lot more flexibility what you want to do from the return on investment perspective to the company. Generally speaking, I still dislike pure volume and pure revenue commission for all the same reasons we've talked about, and that extends to that level. But I think from there, a lot of my thoughts are really tied back to our own experiences with our own methodologies. And generally speaking, in that methodology, it's pay as much or if not more, at least at that level. And we've talked about time horizons and how people think about longer term and building people. There's a lot there. So, maybe I'll kick it back to you, Mike, in terms of what you think about in terms of management level and really focusing on the other side of it, which is kind of making sure we're properly taking that other side of the scale, which is dollars to effort return ratio.
Yeah, you're exactly right. Where we need to have the same amount or close to skin in the game for our managers as we do for our team or for our reps. But I feel like they also need to have a different plan where it's not just always a roll up. I think that's where a lot of comp plans for team leads go astray. One way would be completely different objectives than what we're asking our reps to do, so they're not aligned. We have managers, team leads out there running around trying to accomplish their goals when reps are out running around trying to accomplish their goals, and they're just not aligned. So I don't think that works at all. But I also think that getting right now, the majority of team leads and managers, I would say, are comped like senior reps, basically, right? They're a senior rep being comped that way, but they're expected to lead teams. They're expected to develop sales reps. They're expected to develop professionals and not just lead sales, right? We're asking a lot more from them than just being a senior rep. And when you tie that manager's comp only top line sales, you're rewarding luck, punishing coaching, I guess, in my opinion, right? Where if me as a manager and I need to spend some extra time coaching up this rep, which in the long term is the best for the business, might not hit all of his goals or my goals this month, but in the long term, it's the best for the business. That's where I need to have my focus, because that's what needs to get done, right? So I think an overall, and I won't say percentage wise, because I don't think there is a magic number of whatever I think fits best for your comp plan. What we've already talked about, like what Bud, you had alluded to earlier, but also having the adequate amount of dollars for your team leads and managers to motivate them in that plan as well, but not just tied to overall sales, right? Tied to percentage of reps that are on track, team milestones, display execution, new placements, total team achievements, the same achievements, the same objectives that we're asking our reps to, but that roll up there, that, right? GP targets, all that good stuff. But I think overall, we have to bring our team leads back into coaching and doing what we've hired them, and what we rely on them to do is build the teams that we need and coach those teams back up to where they need to be. And if your managers, this is my seamless plug, if your managers don't own the game plan, they'll never coach to it, because it's just not their plan, right? They need to own that plan, coach to it, get their reps as strong as they can be on their own and their own pace. I guess not at their own pace, but you know what I'm trying to say there.
I mean, my favorite is when we have customers where the sales management comes in hard, says, "Hey, cut my base, put more at variable," because I can see what's happening here. I'm making moves with the NAs. I'm making moves with the RTDs with my those people underneath me at the sales team. We're kicking ass, and I want my piece of it.
Mm-hmm.
That's what you want to see, and that's the type of thing that Mikey's talking about, which is getting the management aligned from a timing perspective to that long-term skills-based management of the sales reps, but also getting in there and helping push things across the finish line as far as strategic needs of the company and those things that are driving the business.
Yeah. Do we want our...
No, go ahead, Mike.
I was just going to add to what you said. Do we want our team leads driving in their own car to the account, selling in the objective or the target that they're tied to and earning their dollars? Or do we want our team leads meeting up with the reps at the account or driving them in the same car as them, watching them, coaching them through the sell-in, or having them watch you in that sell-in process? Right? It's like I can catch a, how's it go? I can give you a fish, or I can teach you how to fish, right? Do we want our reps to learn how to fish from our experienced team leads and managers?
And I think we've talked about it before. We want alignment all the way across the company. A lot of times we talk about how if we're properly managing the incentive structure at the rep level, we're matching what the company's trying to achieve. It's, again, what's the company trying to achieve? Maximize incremental profitability, total dollars generated. And having the sales team aligned to that's great. But over here, you've got senior, management ownership over here that's aligned to it. You need to make sure that middle segment, that middle management layer is as in step with what the C-suite's doing as the reps are doing. So you could do a great job at the rep level. You could be a great senior management team. If you screw up that middle, you're not aligned.
Mm-hmm.
The middle is so important to be able to get the rest of the team engaged, because as a leader, you can only have so many touch points with so many folks every single day where you know what you want them to do. That middle management tier is so influential because they're out in the trade every single day, either working with or for or covering a rep in one way, shape, or form. And those folks are just so important. So balancing them, focusing on them is a really important. They're oftentimes more bought into the change, or you can lean into them to help with the change management of these things that you're leaning into as well. And that's why it's really important to bring them into the fold first, get them excited, get them to understand what you're trying to do, and push the outcomes in their direction as well, so that they're moving in the right direction. Because they'll force the change. The best team leads we have in our network of clients will force the change through their teams. And you see it in the results, and you see it in the outcomes at clients as well.
Yeah, they're not the ones that are, boots on the ground every single day. But I like to think of it this way. They're either going to accelerate your success or they're going to destroy your success. They have the ability to hyperdrive your culture and success, or completely destroy it. Yep. So you cannot ignore it.
Yep. And you guys were talking a lot about there, riffing on that this is a culture thing. And what I want people to take away from this discussion is that how you're utilizing your dollars is we're just talking about spending dollars in a very efficient manner to get the results you're looking for. And that's a culture conversation. And that if we're not thinking through how we're actually strategically using these dollars to get the outcomes you're looking for, then you're just missing out on squeezing every single incremental effort. We've talked about this from one of my favorite people in behavioral science, is Don Ream, where he talks about what is incremental effort. It's the effort that I'm going to put in so that I go above and beyond, because I know what I get paid as my salary is I get paid that much to be asked to show up tomorrow. What I get out of this is my incremental effort is how do I do more today because I want to, because I'm choosing to provide that incremental effort to the business in some way, shape, or form, because I'm getting value back out of it. So that's what we got to figure out.
And I can't stress this enough. There is more to life than just the amount of money we're spending on are paying. And being on a team that's winning, i.e. the company has things that they're trying to achieve, having that alignment all the way down, daily tracking, people feel better showing up to work when they know that the company is winning.
Mm-hmm.
And again, that goes back to we talked about goal setting. We talked about those elements out there, but there's more to it than the dollars. But yes, absolutely, what Bud's saying is we need to make sure that effort to return ratio is properly aligned. But there's other ways to get people excited to show up to work beyond just dollars.
Yeah, and I think building in and bringing in that trust factor too goes a long way. You're going to get the buy-in. At-risk pay doesn't necessarily just drive results, right? It shows your team what you actually value as a company, what the company values, what the strategic plan of the company is. So when we have things that we're paying on or targeting that doesn't really align with the strategic value or vision of the company, it really shows our reps that like, hey, these are BS targets. Like, why am I even trying to do this? I know it won't work. They know it won't work. Why are we trying to do this? So, an at-risk or an at-risk pay plan done well, it can really build trust and results. Done poorly, it's a silent killer. And being a silent killer is a really quick way to just drive all of your reps out of engagement.
Well, let's segue into winning. Do we think this will or won't win? And that is private label beer. Walmart, the largest retailer in the world, is getting into private label beer. And, this thing, let's share this screen so we can kind of talk about this.
What's their go-to-market? What's their distribution channel?
I don't know. I mean, they're using a distributor in each market in some way to actually ship this product out. They have to be, because very few places where they could do this direct. But they have created this Brewmasters selection, which is 3 brands. They've got Brewmasters Premier, Brewmasters Light, and Brewmasters Golden Cerveza, kind of targeting at that Michelob Ultra, Bud Light, Miller Lite, and then also Modelo as well. And we can see it here on the shelves. Like, what do we think about this? Is private label beer at scale something that's going to work? We have seen it before. Trader Joe's does a ton of private label. Aldi does a ton of private label. Obviously, lots of footprint in terms of number of stores, but a fairly small retailer compared to Walmart, for sure. But what do we think about this, guys?
I think it's going to be the ultimate tell. Brand, taste versus pricing. It really is. Yeah. I mean, you've heard me say a lot. I mean, brands are built on lifestyle, right? Lifestyle activities. Brands make you feel a certain way. Brands could make you feel cool or like you're fitting in or doing this or doing that, right? Of how those brands, I don't know how this brand is going to make you feel. I feel like I'm going to see this brand the most when you show up at like Aunt Edna's house and she's like, oh, I've got beer in the fridge if you want one, right? Not necessarily showing up to the neighborhood barbecue or at your buddy's house, but I could be totally wrong. And if it tastes amazing, then they can go a lot further. But I mean, it's really hard for any brewery outside of the macro brewers to get a Miller Lite, Coors Light, Bud Light, Ultra taste down. It's really hard.
I feel like this has been tried before, and I don't think it's gone well. In fact,
it actually has been tried specifically by Walmart. They got sued over it, and it was killed. The project was crushed shortly after.
I think Mike completely identified it. I mean, there's no marketing. There's no on-premise. Going back to where I was talking about, there's no on-premise brand building happening here. There's no niche store brand building happening. You're not seeing the beautiful people out drinking it. Nobody's sitting there with a Walmart can at the local bar.
I don't know that. I know a couple bars, Ross, that would definitely drive to Walmart and have them there for what was it cost 79 cents a unit. So yeah, dollar beers all day long.
And then the people that have been successful with it, and the person I probably trust the most is Costco. And what they've done is they've gone to the premier brewers and had them produce it for them.
Yeah.
You know, that light can I see on the shelf is Deschutes, and even sub-labeled with Deschutes.
It says Deschutes on it too.
It says it,
yeah.
and I think that's a successful strategy.
Yep.
Because you're getting product quality recognition and all that, and value, and under a Kirkland label. So where I've seen what this done, it hasn't been successful. Maybe I'll be surprised, just like with the Busch Light line. You know, maybe I'll get surprised here.
Mike hit the nail on the head. What you drink still says something about you.
Mhm.
How you hold it in your hand, and this works across beverage alcohol segments too, not just beer, but wine and liquor as well. What you drink says something about you, and the brand you carry says something about you. I still with you, Mike. I think that holds true as well. And I'm not a big believer in private label, but I brought this up because Mars and Kellanova are working through a merger together. They've got approval in 27 of 28 locations or geographical, whatever you want to call it, across the world. And the only one that is holding up right now is the EU. And as talking to a couple of Kellanova folks about this, it sounds like that EU is buying into this concept of that Kellanova and Mars are going to be too powerful. But over in Europe, almost half of the consumer packaged goods segment is private label retail or private label that retailers own. So their largest competitor is actually private label. And I find that fascinating that in the US, it's not like that. Private label is incrementally growing, but nowhere near that big. And that's why I wanted to bring it up. Like, is this an outcome that we see long term? It has worked in some other categories. I don't think it's going to work with beverage alcohol because it's just different here than what it is like the box of cereal you buy or the chips you buy. You're going to put them in a freaking bowl anyways before you put them out to people.
For sure. I have a bet update too when we're done talking about this.
All right, bet update. We got 5 minutes left.
Bet update. I'm in the middle of nowhere. Everybody knows that, right? It takes me, well, there is a gas station that has a large beer cave. It's about 15, 16 minutes away. I went there last week, and there was a mountain of Busch Light 30s on display and a pretty good size 3-4 stacks of Busch Light Lime 30 packs on display in the beer cooler. I walked in that cooler yesterday. Busch Light's completely gone, and I think there's 1 30-pack of Lime missing. Just as an update. I mean, that's one account, one scenario, but I don't know, Ross.
We shall see.
We shall see. Yet. And I'm in Busch Light country. I mean, this is where I'm at. This is where the brand was thriving well before it was cool, right? So we shall see.
Well, they probably should have done a Busch Light Lime camo pack.
Would be a fishing pack in Michigan.
Yeah,
be a fishing pack or a lake Busch Light.
I'd like to hear an update from someplace warm like Florida, California. I don't know, someplace where it's warm and lime beers go well.
I love it. Well, if you're enjoying what we're doing, please like and subscribe. You can hit us up at info@vxptech.com. That's info@vxptech.com. Questions, listener comments, you want to call bullshit on any of these things, would love to listen and talk about all of that. And also, we're going to continue to do some new ones. We've got some interesting topics coming up very soon, a little more cultural, a little more academic. They should be lots of fun. And we've got some fun guests planned over the next couple of months as well, too. So, Ross, enjoy the future as you are over in continental Europe and a few hours before us. So, hope the rest of the Wednesday goes as well as it has been for you, as it will be for us as well. And we're going to need some fresh new backgrounds as we go along the way too.
It's a beautiful evening in Paris, so I'll leave it at that.
I love it. Well, cheers, boys. Thanks for joining us. And for everybody listening, we'll see y'all next week.
Cheers.